We've got this masterclass where we've got a very special guest, that is Sunny Mehrotra. He is a product manager at Google and such an illustrious career. I can just go on and on, from IIT Roorkee, ISB, visiting scholar at the University of British Columbia. Besides that, what people have to say is that he has this great user insight because of which he's able to deliver fantastically successful products. I'm really looking forward to this entire session, and I hope that I'll garner a fresh perspective on the entire aspect of products. So I'll let you spearhead the conversation. Really looking forward to the masterclass.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nija, for the kind words. I hope I'm half as good as what you claim me to be. But we can go ahead, and I hope these 60 minutes are worthwhile for each and everyone who's taking out time today, especially when the IPL is starting in the next 30 minutes or so. So thank you all for joining in. I'll just take a minute to share my screen, and then we can go ahead.
Certainly. In the interim, everybody, please feel free to use the Q&A option. Any doubts regarding product, technical issues, anything that you're having, please feel free to put it in the question answer box. Towards the end of the masterclass, we'll be addressing all those doubts.
Today, I'll be focusing on product strategy, which, as this slide claims, the backbone of any product. And we'll try to go more deeper into what product strategy is, how it is conceived. Maybe we can go through a couple of case studies as well. We'll try to understand it through a few examples, and then at the very end we can discuss about product strategy, interview questions, and any other questions that you all have for me. But before that, maybe we can get started. Nija already introduced me, but I'll just give you a quick introduction. I'm a product manager with Google. Spent 4 years with Google, especially with Google Pay in the last 3 years. And I've been on the product strategy side for the first few years, and then recently I have moved into the product management side of the word as well. Before Google, I went to ISB, IIT, and spent some time with a startup called housing.com for almost 4 years, and then also spent some time with Futures First, which is more of a proprietary trading company based out of Gurgaon. Moving ahead, what we'll do in this session, as I said, we'll discuss what is product strategy, and very rightly, what is not product strategy. We'll go through some of the product life cycle and the strategy life cycle and try to differentiate how is it different, how are the nuances across both these categories, which we usually casually interchange in our conversations. Then we'll do a case study. We have a product strategy bingo as well, and then we'll open the floor for questions and answers. So let's dive into the discussions. And because product strategy is never a one-way communication, I rather wanted it to be a two-way communication. I'm not sure if that is practically possible. Nirja, do let me know if that is not. But I wanted to start off with this question. Should Netflix launch a hardware product to compete with Alexa? And I just wanted to have inputs from everyone before I share my perspective on this.
So we've got one yes, and we've got a bunch of no's at the moment. And there's a Karthik who's saying it'll be like Domino's starting to sell biryani. And Rohan is saying yes. Parsh is saying I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, thank you for suggesting that. Yeah, thank you. So maybe I can also read out some. Prateek says, no, it's time for collaboration. Atulya says not to compete with Alexa, but with Fire Stick or Apple TV. Rahul says maybe, but research plays a part. Ramdas says, yes, I think because Netflix is a big platform with a lot of customer base. Cool, very, very good answers, very enriching answers. But just to set up the context, there is no black and white here. There is no a yes or no here without even evaluating that what Netflix is into. And let me tell you, like, we all confuse ourselves in saying that Netflix is a streaming app. It is a streaming app which competes with the likes of Hotstars and Amazons in India, and tries to give you all possible content in form of movies, short videos, and everything. On the face of it, it looks like Netflix is dealing in that sort of a business, but it is actually dealing in your attention business. And let me elaborate what attention means. Like, you will usually explore Netflix in your free time. It will try to capture your attention through its content in one way or the other. Netflix is not necessarily a streaming platform. If you go back into the history of Netflix, it started off as a DVD rental company, which used to mail your DVDs for any request that you would have for any content way back in 1990s. And then it disrupted itself to like open multiple stores where they had their DVDs, and they started a subscription where people can just pay upfront for a month or two or for a year, and then they can take any DVD from their stores and return back once they are done with it. And then they disrupted themselves again when the tech evolved and decided to go do streaming. And they might disrupt themselves again in future to do something else. But what is the common line and common thread that is connecting all these disruptions in the past? It is all about capturing your attention. It is capturing the biggest pie of your attention. Right now, whenever you are free, you are spending time in your hobby, you are spending time on Netflix, you are spending time on Instagram, you are spending time on all other things that you feel are important to you in one way or the other. And Netflix is competing in that business. We usually confuse ourselves saying only competitors to Netflix is Amazon and Hotstar, and or to some extent YouTube. But here, Netflix competitor is Instagram as well. I'll pause for a second just to see the feedback that you guys are putting it on the chat. So please feel free to put in more content there. We all will sort of learn this together. But just wanted to pick your thoughts, pick your brains on how does this resonate with you in one way or the other. So Shubham says, yes, they can follow on the lines of eco with a video stream, but depends on what their future plan is. They can create an ecosystem with these innovations. Saurabh says, no, Amazon is a huge compared to Netflix and would wipe out it at the instant. Data shows Netflix is already struggling with subs, and getting into hardware would mean more burnout. Great discussions. Yes, I really like Pulkit's answer here. Isn't Netflix biggest competition sleep? Yes, sleep is definitely one of the biggest competitors to Netflix. Thanks for putting up this perspective as well. Yeah, so as I said, it is competing for your attention, and sleep is also one of the things that you do in your free time. So definitely agreed with you, Pulkit, there. So maybe coming back to the problem at hand, should Netflix launch a hardware product to compete with Alexa? We have to figure out what Netflix strategy is. Is Netflix strategy to just compete on your attention? Is Netflix strategy to go beyond that? Like if you would have heard about few things, what Netflix is planning to do in future is getting into some of the social content, some of the content where they will try to get interactive with you. In the middle of the movie itself, they would rather ask you which way you want to go into, and they have already tried with some pilots on a couple of productions that they have done in the past. But then they're planning to do it even more aggressively. In the middle of the movie, you will be asked which direction do you want to get into, and the movie actually goes into that direction, and it will try to interact with you every other time based on how you react to that content. And that movie eventually, or that content eventually, becomes a very customized content for you in one way or the other. They're also planning to get into gaming. They are also planning to get into the other social content that Netflix would be relevant. So again, I would not answer this question specifically, because if it is as easy as whether Netflix should launch another title, the answer is yes. Whether Netflix should launch a new jewelry store, the answer is no. But whether Netflix should launch a hardware product to compete with Alexa, it's a gray area. It will all depend on how Netflix would want to play out in the long run from that perspective. And we have very similar questions when we think of other apps, other companies. Maybe the next question that we have is, should Zomato launch a social media app? Now, again, the same thing. Zomato, what is Zomato doing? Like Zomato, if you all remember way back in, I think in the last decade or so, when they were just a restaurant search app, they had this social content where you created your profile, left your reviews. People used to follow you in one way or the other. And that is still there on Zomato, maybe not as relevant as it was a decade back. But people actually followed you if you were a prominent food blogger. And your reviews would matter a lot to a restaurant. A lot of people get influenced by you based on the feedback that you used to give about a particular restaurant. So in one way or the other, they were into social media, and they had this set of influencers way back when influencing was actually cool. So these are few things that we'll go deeper into, and maybe by the end of the session, we might have more clarity into whether we should do this or not. But just a caution that don't directly jump to a yes or a no answer when you see these kind of questions. You have to take a step back, evaluate, and we'll sort of go together through a particular case to understand how do we step back and how do we go deeper into some of these problems to decide whether this answer eventually should turn out to be a yes or a no. I had a similar question for Apple as well. Like Apple has always been a luxury brand. It has always been a brand where it equates with class, with luxury. And hence a very prominent question that always comes up is, should Apple launch a value for money range of smartphones? This will definitely create a new target segment for them. This will definitely create a new stream of income for them. Their actual revenues and bottom line can possibly get influenced positively at the end of the day. But will it lead to brand dilution in one way or the other? And these are not easy answers. These are things that companies always experiments and tries with before they say a yes or no to these decisions. So maybe by the end of the session, hopefully we'll be in a position to decide whether some of these questions have a yes or a no to it. So now we can probably jump into what product strategy is and what it is not. Like, for example, if you have been into the product setup, or if you have worked with product managers in the past, you would have seen these interfaces. You have Jira, you have Trello, you have multiple sort of apps where you maintain your roadmaps in one way or the other. And this is sometimes gets confused with the roadmap. And that's why we always talk about this thing: is product strategy and product roadmap the same thing or not? And to answer that, your next slide sort of puts up the pyramid very, very well in one way or the other. Do let me know if this resonates with you. So I have broken down the entire problem statement that you might want to work on into 5 segments. At the top is very much mission, where you exactly know what you are chasing. A vision could be how are you planning to chase it? Like, what are the things that matter to you in that mission? And we'll pick up some examples to discuss this in more detail. Then comes your strategy, which sits in the middle layer between your mission and vision, where you aspire to be. And then you have your roadmap and execution at the very end, where it tells you what you are actually doing. In one way or the other, your 4 and 5 decides or helps you to evaluate whether you are moving towards 3 or not, and whether 3, 4, and 5 together combine and say whether you're moving towards 2 or not, and accordingly 1 or not. So top 2 sections are relatively squeezed in, because that needs to be a very, very straightforward, simple one line in terms of what your mission and vision is to be. And that's why you see a smaller sort of a pyramid there. And then as you break down those missions and visions into more bigger problem statements, it becomes a strategy becomes a roadmap, and then roadmap becomes your stories and your Jira tickets at the very end of the day, and you execute at the bottom layer to tie back the story at the top. I'll discuss 2 examples which has stayed with me for a while on this particular topic. So there was I'll take up a hypothetical example. Imagine a situation where not imagine maybe you can consider a situation where a minister is visiting an airport, an under construction airport, and tries to talk to the masons out there. And then he has 3 masons to talk to. He goes to the first mason and asks, and these masons are actually putting a brick and creating sort of a wall for the airport construction. So the minister goes to the first mason and he says that, what are you doing? And then the mason replies that, I'm just putting a brick here. And he's absolutely right in what he answered. He goes to the second person and he asks, what are you doing? And then the second person mentions that he's actually building a wall. And he was also right on his part. And then he goes to the third mason and asks, what are you doing? And then the last person answers, I'm actually constructing the airport. All 3 of them had the right answers, but it all tells you about how are they thinking about the whole problem in terms of what they're doing. The first person was absolutely right. He's just putting the brick, but he is not understanding or evaluating what will it lead to eventually. The second person also knows to an extent that what he's doing, he's building that wall, but he does not connect and associate himself with a contribution to the larger airport that he is building. And the third person has the beautiful answer, where he knows that each and every step that he's doing is leading to solving some of the bigger problems that the company or that the particular project is chasing. And that goes very well with your product strategy as well. Product managers who do not understand what is the implication of a particular Jira ticket that they are doing are someone who do not understand product strategy well. You have to interact with your leadership. You have to interact with your principals, your VPs, AVPs, to understand that each and every step that you're doing should not just be pure execution and should be tactical, but you should always try to connect this back and to what this will eventually solve. What are the bigger problems that you are solving with this? Which will also give a lot of confidence to your engineers when you work with them. Like, engineers always get inspired by the bigger mission, bigger statement that you are chasing as a team. And that's why you always have to be absolutely clear in terms of what implication will a particular effort bring. So maybe we can take an example, and Zomato is a perfect example, because we all are sort of used to or have experienced the product in one way or the other. And do let me know in the comments if someone has not used it, and maybe we can go through their mission, vision, and try to understand how all of them are very different from each other. So maybe if we take Zomato's mission, and I'm sort of trying to quote them from their website, it might be dated or it might not be as relevant as today, but I've just quoted this information from their from their website. Their mission, Zomato's mission says that nobody should have bad meal. So this is Zomato's mission. Nobody should have a bad meal. This is a very simple four word line, which is very abstract to start off with, but they just don't want anyone to have a bad meal. If I talk about their vision, how do they want to do it? How do they envision to chase this mission? They say on their vision that they want to build a global platform to help people search for food locally. And I'm sort of going back into the previous days when they were just a search platform for food. Now they are into delivery, and now they are into even 10-minute delivery. So this vision would have altered in near future, but this is what a vision could be, probably a one-liner vision, that they want to build a global platform. Through global platform, they are mentioning that the platform should serve folks locally, but at the very end of the day, the users should be able to search for food locally. And now maybe search can be replaced by order. Users can order food locally from the nearby restaurant. So that is their vision. Now, what is strategy in this whole setup? Maybe a strategy could be broken down into 4 steps. What they're trying to do through this strategy, what are the strategies that they're following? One is accessibility. They are trying to reach across every single pin code in India. They started off in a tier 1 Delhi. I think, if I remember correctly, they started off in Delhi. They eventually ventured into the entire metro tier 1 city setup. They then they went into tier 2, tier 3, and they want to expand. They want to get into each and every pin code, so that anyone who desires or craves food should be able to access. So accessibility is one sort of a strategy that they want to chase, and everything that they'll do in their roadmap or execution should ideally tie it back to accessibility. The other one is affordability. At the very end of the day, they would want people to have an affordable meal, and they would try to do that in one way or the other by chasing it with the ecosystem. The third could be assortment, because at the very end of the day, everyone needs choices. People would want to have all varieties and all choices that they can potentially order from. So affordability, accessibility, and assortment are the 3 top requirements from a user when they are on Zomato. That is the strategy at the strategy layer, and everything then they build on from a roadmap perspective, or any feature release that they do eventually should tie back to any of the strategies that we have just discussed. I'll stop here for a second and maybe read some of the conversations that you're putting on chats, and then we can move ahead with the rest of the stuff. So I see Pulkit mentioning, I think Zomato should make a social app, make it paid. Each notification gives coming back why. That's a great call out. Ashwin says Zomato could introduce group chat and bill splitting features. Again, we should not directly just talk about the feature, but we should actually talk about what are the strategies that Zomato should enter into, and then tie it and connect it back to the feature. Like, what is group chat leading to? Will group chat lead to social sort of a conversation? Yes. Is social their priority or social their strategy? Maybe yes, maybe no. If that is their strategy, then they should definitely chase it. Otherwise, no. And yeah, maybe I can go through one of the last comments here, where Himanshu says, shouldn't quality of food be a strategy targeted from a user's perspective? Absolutely right, Himanshu. Quality of food is definitely should be one of the strategies. I'm not sure if they have already mentioned it on their website, but if I understand correctly, this is very logical. So affordability, accessibility, and assortment should have a 4th category in their strategy as well, which is quality of food. I think they do a very good job in trying to standardize some of these efforts through the restaurants that they work with. So I'm guessing quality of food should also qualify as one of their strategies. Thank you for putting up these thoughts and questions here. And now I think their strategy in the recent times would become delivery in 10 minutes. So we will discuss more on this if time permits us, but in the interest of time, let's move ahead. Thanks for putting up these thoughts and messages. Very enriching. So maybe we can just go through some of the things that this slide captures. We have tried discussing it in different capacities so far, but we can just go through these line items as well. So what product strategy is? It's just not a roadmap with a given timeline. As we discussed, roadmap is a second layer after strategy, which is much more detailed than a strategy. It is also not just about defining goals and talking about actions. This is again the last step where you actually execute. It is a very high level plan which talks about how the goals needs to be achieved, what the product is, who the product is for, and who will pay for it. So very, very abstract in terms of what is the team chasing with that sort of activity. It is a living organism that grows, learns, and improves. As we discussed the Netflix example, it is something that Netflix always wanted. They wanted to grab the attention of the user, and they are okay to chase it via any medium. They tried doing that with DVD. That technology got disrupted. They moved into streaming. It might get disrupted in the next 5 years or so. We might get into the meta world and AR and VRs of the world. We might get into the Web3s, and their streaming might not be as relevant as it is today. And I'm sure Netflix would evolve to serve its customers in one way or the other in future. And the very last, I have this beautiful line. It is not, strategy is not about predicting what will change in 5 years or 10 years. Actually, it's the opposite. And I have a very, very good example that has lived with me for a long time, where Amazon says, like, someone was asking Amazon, or someone was asking Jeff Bezos, and trying to understand his mind share in terms of what will Amazon witness in the next 5 years, what will Amazon witness in the next 10 years, or where the technology could be. And he said that I cannot predict it. I even don't know where will the technology be, what will be the market like, what is the future like. Nobody is in any capacity to predict in the, and if you're taking decision based on that prediction, you'll always end up on the wrong side of things. Imagine a situation if someone or if some company would have decided that we'll in 2017, if they would have a 5-year roadmap or a 5-year prediction, they would not have encountered or incorporated COVID by any chance. No company, no individual would have incorporated COVID-19 in their planning or in their strategy in any capacity. So it's very, very difficult to predict the future. Today, we cannot predict that what will happen in 2027, but we can definitely predict what will not change. And that's what Jeff Bezos said, that I don't know what will change in the next 5 years, but I know 3 things that will not change in the next 5 years. I know my customers will still demand faster delivery. No one will come back to me and say, Jeff, I'm okay with 5-day delivery. Please do change it from 2-day to 5-day. I know for a fact that my customers will not come and say, okay, Jeff, please don't put so many assortments on your website. I am just happy with 2 options available to me. Third thing that he mentioned was that I will not have customers coming back to me and say that Amazon or Jeff, your products are very, very cheap on your website. I want expensive products. Please do make their prices better. So he was very sure that these things will not change. People will still demand better prices. People will still demand better assortment. People will still demand faster delivery. That thing is not supposed to change, and all your strategy ideally should be built on things that will not change instead of things that will change. Hope this landed well with all of you. Maybe we can go through a list of actions or a proper diagram where we go through the product strategy life cycle in total. So maybe we can go through this entire circle and how it comes in together. So we have goals where you have to prioritize, measure, and specifically set of goals that you want to achieve in a given time frame. And with that goal comes the opportunities, where you describe the context you operate in and the biggest opportunities, and then obstacles that stood on your way in one way or the other. You build your hypothesis, because usually when you are building strategies, you are building products. If you're improving your products, you already have some or the other data at the very end. But if you are not having data, or if you're building something absolutely new where you might not have enough data, you might have to chase a hypothesis. You have to believe in a hypothesis, and you have to see whether that hypothesis works out for you or not. So hypothesis becomes the third step here, where you are committed to pursuing to address each obstacle or opportunity. You believe in that hypothesis, and you then take actions to chase that hypothesis. That eventually becomes your strategic roadmap. Again, very thin line between strategy and roadmap, as we discussed in the previous line. But this is actually the roadmap that eventually very, very high level visual articulation of your strategy and progress towards the goals. And then comes your product outcomes, where you define your outcome. What exactly do you want to solve for? What is the customer user journey that you are building towards? And here you define and measure is a very, very important word, because that is an experiment that you are doing, and you would want to understand at each and every step whether that is working out for you or not, or whether that your hypothesis is getting validated or not in one way or the other. And and then you continue to iterate to ensure that your hypothesis is either converting into a thesis or not. And then eventually that product outcome has to become very, very granular story or a feedback this story should be as granular as possible in terms of a user is like, we take an example. I on Zomato should be able to leave feedback for a restaurant. Now, this is a very, very straightforward, simple story. We should be able to connect back that what does this mean? What does this would lead to as a product outcome? What it will imply on my product, on my strategic roadmap, and whether it resonates with my hypothesis or not. So this is the entire cycle. You have your stories, your feedback, you get the data, you try to improvise, you iterate on that, and then you build on, and you see whether it is trying to help you achieve the goals or not. And if not, then you again restart the cycle and go through this journey again and again. Cool. A lot of theoretical knowledge. Maybe we can go through a case together. Rudraksh says execution of 10-minute delivery needs a strong network and distribution of resources, whether it's a restaurant or delivery assistant on Zomato. Great point, Rudraksh. Then Rajat is sort of countering Rudraksh's point with what Zomato has said, and it's a never-ending battle. We should have an opinion about whether it will work or not, but I think time will probably tell whether this is good or not. But there are folks on either side having very genuine, logical statements whether Zomato would be able to achieve that or not. And then Sparsh at the end has asked, how can a company validate its product strategy from a customer's perspective for a new product? I would rather answer this question at the very end, Sparsh, so please do ask it again if I forget. But would definitely love to cover this point at the end. Maybe we can start the case. Okay, so we have a hypothetical company called 2 Plus and not 1 Plus. And the question is, and it's a very similar question to what we were discussing earlier about Netflix entering into a hardware console, a Zomato entering into a social media setup, and we now have a question where should 2 Plus enter the gaming console market or not? It's a hypothetical company. If there's a 2 Plus, please don't quote me on it. But 2 Plus is established, like hypothetically, 2 Plus is established mobile phone company in the eastern part of the globe, with strong dominance in India, China, and Southeast Asia. It wants to evaluate if it should enter the gaming console market or not, and it's asking for your suggestions. I would have loved to pick your brains on this before we jumped into the solution or the way we want to handle this. But in the interest of time, I'll just hypothetically quote Neerja here. So maybe the interviewer is asking Neerja whether we should do this or not, and then how should Neerja probably attempt this problem. Is Neerja should first start with some sanity clarification, some clarifying questions in terms of what is the motivation for 2 Plus to do this. Try to understand what exactly is the question. Maybe repeat the question again so that you get a nod from the interviewer in one way or the other, whether the understanding of the question is right or not. Maybe another clarifying question is how important is it for the org and what are the markets that we are chasing. So for example, if we pick a motivation here, we know for a fact that gaming has exploded across the globe, and especially on the eastern side of the world. We are seeing so many games that have become popular. Even if you all know, Microsoft has acquired a gaming company called Activision for a multi-billion-dollar deal, where Microsoft even feels that gaming is supposed to explode, and everybody who is in the thick and thin of things to capture the pie of this gaming market, 2 Plus is also trying to see if there is any motivation or if there's any synergies in terms of what they do versus not they don't do, and how big would it be for them. So maybe have some clarifying questions. Like as an interviewer, you should have a clarifying question. And I'll go back to the problem statement again. 2 Plus is trying to figure out whether they want to enter into a gaming console market or not. So maybe start with a clarifying question on console. That what kind of a console are you thinking about? Like, is it a arcade console where like similar to Nintendo Pi sort of a thing where you have something in your hand and you play around with it? Or it's something like a VR, AR, Facebook, Oculus kind of a thing where you just plug something on your face and try to play it through that interface. Or it could be a proper hardware. Everything is a hardware, but like a proper traditional sort of a console like Xbox or a PS5, where we already have Sony and Microsoft competing in one way or the other. So you should understand from the interviewer whether what do they really mean by console here, and are they open to evaluate all these options, or maybe one of them, or maybe a fourth option that you might not even think about. Like I'm just thinking out loud with you, maybe like having something on your mobile phone as well, where you can play on your mobile itself without having a separate hardware to enjoy your gaming. Then we should probably understand that what are the markets that we are chasing, whether we are planning to start in India, we are planning to start in China, which are one of the biggest players, biggest geographies in terms of gaming, or whether we should start in America, which has historically been one of the biggest platforms, biggest geographies. So we should understand how are we planning to even chase it, which will sort of decide how much financing would we need, and other things. I'm not going to finance side of things. We'll stick to the product strategy questions in the, as a scope of this particular case. Then we can understand what are the market segments that we are chasing with it. Like try to understand what are the user personas that you are chasing with this as 2 plus. Are you chasing single player gaming, like you pick up your console, you pick up your mobile, you pick up your any interface, and you just try to play it alone? And these are some hardcore gamers that they do that do. Then the second segment could probably be a professional player. Like there are a lot of now with better tech, we have a lot of professional players, hardcore gaming, who compete at the in big tournaments, and have multiplayer gaming enabled in across, and which allows you to bridge that gap of geography and play across. So this is a second segment, which are professional players, very hardcore gamers. And the third could be very casual social media gamers or social gamers, like playing Candy Crush and Mario and all those things, where the market size would be very huge in number. Almost everyone who's not a very hardcore gamer would sort of land into this particular market segment. But there's always a propensity of not spending out a lot from this particular segment. So there are multiple segments that the team can possibly chase, or 2 plus can possibly chase with this single player gaming, multiplayer gaming, or social gamers. And then we can probably divide it into the next step that I have on my uh, slide, which is you have to evaluate the company here. You have to figure out why only 2 plus. Like everything that we were doing right now or discussing in the previous slide was more and more about the market segments, the possible options in terms of console. So it does not have to talk about anything with 2 plus. But maybe the second category or second bucket that you can think of is evaluating a company. Why is only 2 plus is in a position to probably places out, or with why should only 2 plus think of enter into a mobile gaming market? Why can't PC jewelers decide to get into that? And there you have to evaluate whether what are the strengths of 2 plus, what are the weaknesses of 2 plus, and synergies and competitors. So maybe if I have to think of the strengths of 2 plus here, one, it has a very broad distribution already available. It is established player in the mobile space and the other tech peripherals. So it has already a lot of distribution sorted out across the globe or across this continent. And it also has a loyal set of users who would love to explore their product. So their brand is already there, their distribution is already sorted, so they can potentially use that in their advantage to do this. Maybe the other thing that they already have is they already have a mobile phone in the hands of every individual. That is a proven product that has done well in the past. So they know for a fact that they already have that sort of a thing, that if at all we want to do this on their mobile itself, they can build some sort of a technology and try to enable that in their existing hardware without creating new. In terms of weakness, if I have to think about it, one of the weaknesses is definitely not having specialization. Like they are not into gaming, so they don't have a specialization in game creation, which requires a special skill set in terms of understanding gamers, understanding users, the technology behind it, and all the other things that comes around the specialization of the whole setup. The other weakness that I can probably think of is it requires probably a very big investment. Again, 2 plus might not be in a situation where they are short of funds, but that then You always have an opportunity cost along coming along with everything that you do. So it, because it requires a big investment, and hence it definitely needs to be thought through. Definitely not a very big weakness, but it's more of something that one needs to be very careful about. And then it requires network effect, because like if you remember, uh, uh, if to grow a particular game, or if you remember when Nintendo launched their Pokemon game way back 5 years back, then they were very they grew significantly because of the network effect. So network effect, if some of you already know and understand, is something that captures the essence of people vouching for you in one way or the other, or people engaging with you in one way or the other, where there's a proper sunk cost if you don't go along with that. So imagine a situation where, uh, imagine an example of Instagram. Instagram has a network effect because you are following multiple people and multiple people are following you. So one feeds into the other and the other feeds into another, and so on, and this becomes a proper network which continues to feed into each other and grows in pi by doing that activity. And gaming is no different. Gaming also requires this sort of a network effect, and that is where and 2 plus is having its own weakness as compared to other established gaming players. uh, so these are the things that you have to evaluate about a company. Maybe then you evaluate about the opportunity. How's the market size? We have discussed about it. User segment. What are the competitors doing here? What is the risk if it does not pick up? Like if I have to think about the market strength here or the market size, we have a tailwind in time. Like we discussed that the gaming industry is supposed to explode. So we have a lot of tailwind there. This market is supposed to boom in very near future. There's a tailwind in technology. We know for a fact that there are new technologies are coming up, AR, VR. Uh, we have Web3 coming in. We have these metaverse that is growing significantly, and we know for a fact that gaming would move into a different orbit altogether if done right at the very end. And then you have some risk associated with that as well, because with every new technology, not all technologies pick up, not all technologies kick off at the very end of the day. Like if you remember, VR has been there for a very long time, but VR requires some very typical hardware to be worn on your head, which is not comfortable with everyone, so it has not reached masses. But maybe there are some other technologies that has reached masses in one way or the other. So there's always a risk of technology not picking up, and that would lead to finances not working out. So again, I'm not eventually answering it as a yes or a no, because there's no right answer as yes or a no. If that would have been, 2 plus would have already done that. Everybody should have an opinion. So I would rather say, if you ask my opinion at the very end of it is 2 plus should definitely launch. It should definitely enter gaming console market. Maybe it should have a AR VR sort of a technology where it should ideally convert its existing smartphones with that technology, and sort of provide that experience with their existing smartphones instead of creating new hardware altogether. It would attract a lot more customers. It would attract existing customers as well to jump onto their gaming bandwagon. And no competitor is doing that as of now, so they can definitely be a market leader or a first mover. They can always have a first mover advantage here. But as a disclaimer, this is not the perfect answer. This is not the absolutely right answer. You will definitely have other opinions, and that is also correct, and that also lands well with the interviewer in one way or the other. You should always have the reasons why one should do X versus Y at the very end of the day. If you have your answers backed by definite reasons, if you have backed by some data, it will definitely land well, irrespective of the solution. So people don't look for the solutions at the end. They always look for the journey that you have traversed to achieve that, or to come to that conclusion at the end. Cool. I am done with my stuff. We only have 10 minutes. So this is a cool product strategy bingo. Thanks to the Master Union team. They have created this bingo. And I'll leave you with this particular bingo here to see if you were able to take away any of these one-liners mentioned on that bingo. And if I've been able to do justice to 3, 4, or 5 of the lines mentioned in the bingo, I would feel happier about this whole 1 hour session that we did. I'll stop now. Over to you, Nija and Vaibhav, and then we can discuss some questions, some thoughts, and yeah, we can spend the rest of the 10 minutes by being more interactive and have a two-way communication there.
Absolutely. I think it was really enriching. Thanks a ton for that, particularly the way that you took us through the case. And a line that just stays with me: strategy is not built on the things that you can't predict, but things that will not change. So I think that was the biggest takeaway over here. I'll just quickly share the questions which are coming in. So let's just look at them. There's this question Pash is asking: how can a company validate its product strategy from customers' perspective for a new product?
Yeah, thanks, Persh, for asking that question. I'll try to answer it with my limited experience that I have. So I was involved in a lot of product strategies or sort of product creation, which were absolutely new to the market, and we really didn't have enough data to back that up. So I would rather start off with you doing a lot of user research in the past. Try to understand that what is the motivation behind doing all of this. So you should understand the problem statement. You should understand what are the customer segments that you are trying to target, and you should understand the motivation of that particular user segment. Uh, so if you are able to do that, if you remember that circular chart that you were discussing, then comes your hypothesis. Like you will have a hypothesis that this will work or this will not work. Again, you don't have enough data, you have market data, but that is not enough to help you understand whether that can work or not. You need to have a hypothesis. You need to build your product, a many very specific minimum viable product. I was intentionally not using jargons here because these are something that we'll eventually learn as a part of the course once we do that. But there's a concept called minimum viable product where you do the minimal thing, where you just pick up a single user journey and see whether the most important user journey that you are trying to validate your hypothesis is with, and you just build that, and you don't even need to build your tech around it. Maybe you can just build a design. You can just build some Figma or some Figma screens, and where some of the interactions can eventually lead to that particular user journey, and you can just build that out and just put it in front of your people. You just should put it with some of the users that your friends and family to start off with. You can go to strangers. You should just put this out in front of people, try to understand the problem statement, put that solution in front of them, and see how are they reacting to that, whether they are actually clicking on the points where you felt they would ideally click, they are actually moving in the direction where you actually felt whether they were supposed to move into, and if they have been able to complete their journey, or if I would say you have to fix a target, if X% of the users were able to complete the journey in a way that you wanted them to be, and at the end of that journey they were happy about that problem getting solved, you have definitely landed your product market fit. Again, this is again a jargon, so I'll sort of refrain myself from using this word product market fit. But if you're interested, definitely search it on YouTube and Google. You'll find relevant content on it. But at the end of the day, you have to find your product market fit, and you have to do that with your minimum viable product to start off with. And you continue to do these iterations. You continue to do these changes based on how the feedback is coming along. You continue to iterate, you continue to grow, and there's this cycle, it's this never-ending cycle, and you have to be very agile and quick about it. And once you see traction coming in, once your product user journey is becoming viral in one way or the other, you know that your fit has been achieved, and then at that point of time you decide to scale. So to achieve scale, you eventually have to do things that don't scale. It's very easy to sort of discard these thoughts or the discussion that we just had by saying that this will not scale. And in a tech world, we usually try to build everything that scales, but to build these things, you always have to do things that don't scale, and you have to iterate multiple times on that, and get your idea right before you spend on scale.
Right. I
I
think that
hope
was
that
a
answers your questions
really,
first.
yeah. Okay. I think you will answer it really elaborately. There's a question from Shubham that what all tools shall we learn if we want to make a career in product management?
Thanks, Shubham, for asking this question. So, a very broad question, Shubham. I would rather say you are a generalist at the very end. So I've seen software engineers becoming product manager. You have seen analysts becoming product managers. I've seen business folks becoming product managers. I've also seen people coming from legal and becoming product managers at the end. So you can become a product manager from any particular specialization, because at the very end you were either an analyst or a QA tester, or you were an engineer, you were a BD guy, you were a sales guy, you were one or the other as a specialist in the company. But then you can always decide to move into, and anybody can probably move into product management who has this capability to have a first principle thinking. If you are able to think like with first principles and try to have a broader picture in terms of what you want to what you want to solve for, and have a passion for problem solving, it would be great. And then there are more details into it. Like I'm a very strong believer of jack of all trades and master of one as a strategy when you want to achieve success in product. So because you work with so many specialists, you sometimes don't get the recognition, or you sometimes don't get the respect from those specialists, because they always feel that your job could be done by someone else. And hence you need to be specialist in at least one thing, which could be your strong point. But ideally you should have your breadth and understanding across all possible things, to have that. And the other thing that I would also sort of just touch upon is user empathy. At the very end of the day, you are solving for your users. You are actually you are at the very end solving problems for them. And to solve problems for them, you need to have empathy for them and empathy for the problems that they're facing. So if you don't understand your users best, you will never be able to solve, irrespective of how good a journalist or how good a specialist you are in your particular function. I hope this answers your question.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's another question by Karthik, which is saying, would data analysis, tracking KPIs important when we are working on a product strategy? And if it is, then how important is it?
Thanks for asking this question, Karthik. I would say one of the biggest or one of the most important things is managing is observing data and tracking data and performance and your KPIs in is a very important thing when it comes to product strategy. Because like if you're building a new product altogether, you don't need a product strategy guy at the very beginning. Like because your founders and your CEOs and your product managers might be able to do that job in one way. So if I understand your question better, you are asking about maybe a mature product, maybe an Alexa today. And if you have to take Alexa to the next heights, what one should do. And there, the role of product strategy guy becomes even more prominent. And the biggest friend to that particular product strategy guy is your data. I love this quote by someone. I don't remember the name now, but this person mentions, you can't improve what you can't measure. So if you are not able to measure how your product is doing, how your product is performing in the form of KPIs that you just asked, you will never be able to improve it. But data plays a role to an extent. Data, I have always sort of said that you should not take data driven decisions. You should always take data informed decisions. And there's a very subtle line between the two. Data driven is always trying to base your decisions based on data. But for data informed is you that you know about the data, but you're still trying to go with or without what data is saying. And just because you have a gut feeling for something to work or not as a part of your hypothesis. So yes, as a TLDR, data definitely plays a very important role, but you should know that how much important it will be in your decision making at the very end.
Right, I think that's a very valid answer. There's a question by Sri Lakshmi, which is saying that how can we answer the question when somebody's saying why are we getting into product management? Even though I think you have answered it indirectly, but still, how can one just justify that why are they getting into product management, or how can they display their passion in the domain of product management?
Yeah, so I can probably talk about my journey. Like if I have to talk about my experience with housing. So the first product tech company that I worked with was with housing.com. And this was way back in 2014 when I started as a business intelligence expert, a very fancy name for a data guy. I was a typical data guy who was helping his product managers and his project managers with different insights. And then they at the very end were taking those decisions for the data that I gave to them. And there showed my passion by jumping into the shoes of the product manager. Like with the data that I was putting up, with the data that I was presenting, with the data, with the insights that I was coming up with, I was also thinking a step ahead in terms of, if I give this data to my product manager, what will this product manager do? How will he think? How will he decide what to do for the user? And can I not do that as well, and try to help him out in one way or the other? Because all product managers are always constrained with bandwidth, so they would always want someone who can help them out with one thing or the other. I still do it with a lot of my analysts and a lot of my engineers, where if they want to take up some part of the problem statements, I give them a free runway to own that, because this was something given to me when I was young. So I think when you get those opportunities where you are working very closely with the product managers or in any capacity, you should take that opportunity to display some of your strengths, display some of your passion to solve customer problems, to solve these issues, and eventually someone or the other will realize your potential if you're doing your job well. And then at that point of time, you just have to put yourself up and convey to anyone who is supposed to take these decisions that I want to actually move into product management. And then if at all you would have some sort of a proven past, people would definitely consider you. This is something that happened with me and a lot of other people that I have engaged with in the past. So I would rather advise, if you are in any function in a company, in any function apart from product in a company, and you want to move into product, maybe first move into a function which works very closely with product. Try to work out with them, and eventually the path would be very streamlined from that front. And if at all that is not feasible because of the industry that you are working and you want to jump and take an orbital shift, then we have these courses, we have these side hustles that we can probably build. And that's what Masters Union is also trying to do. As part of the process, they were trying to bridge that skill gap between people who don't understand product and people who are actually interested in moving into product management. And this would sort of bridge that gap, in both in terms of time, in both in terms of skill sets, and you might eventually land into a product management intern, or APM, or a PM sort of a role, depending on how good you become at the very end of the day on that. Sorry for going very elaborative on that front, but I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. I think it was an absolute delight and proper learning. The way that you shared anecdotal references, the case, over and above, of course, led with your industry knowledge and the theoretical inputs that you had. This masterclass, as rightly said by you, was just like a piecemeal. We are having a product management course as well. We'll be conducting a webinar and info session on that as well very soon. But thanks so much for your time. I think it was genuinely, we had a lot of takeaways, very well conducted, and we definitely look to host you very soon for another masterclass.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you for hosting me.